Forepoint with Abby and Keith. Good work.
Does it work?
Good work.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. So, as Andy said, thank you. I'm Abby. So, just a bit of background on me. I did my degree at Blackpool, don't boo me. During my third year at Blackpool, I did 2 placements. One of them was at the Chase, one of them was at Forepoint, and those 2 placements have basically shaped my entire career. So, when I...
That's funny, we didn't know to.
I don't know how to turn that off. Let me just turn that off, that's very professional.
Why are you in the meeting? I don't mess with it.
I'm not going to touch it because it took a while to set things up. We'll just ignore those notifications. So when I was in my third year I did the placements, then when I graduated I was offered a job at the Chase, and I worked at the Chase as a designer for 5 years, and then I had a baby, and she's now 14. And back in the day, when you had children, there was no such thing as flexible working. I lived between Blackpool and Preston, and obviously was working in Manchester, so it was impossible for me to be able to continue to work at the Chase because flexible working wasn't a thing. So I actually ended up going to work for one of the Chase clients, much to their dismay, which was a company called Places for People, which is actually a housing association, which sounds like a strange move, but they did want to establish their own internal design team. So I went over there, which was on the docks in Preston, so it literally took me 7 minutes to get to work, rather than like an over an hour commute. So I went there to help them establish their internal design team and grow it to the capacity that they've got today. Whilst I was working there, I was also doing the odd bit of teaching at Blackpool, where I would occasionally take my design students round different studios to my contacts, which would be Forepoint. So I took some students in for portfolio reviews and pizzas at Forepoint and ended up walking away with a job myself. And I've been at Forepoint for, I think it's coming up.
Too long. Not long enough. Not long enough.
So I've been at Forepoint for nearly 6 years now.
Mad. Well, I've been there a bit longer, so my history is very much with, I'm old, so it was a polytechnic. So I came here in 1986. Anybody alive in 1986?
I was once.
Oh, yeah, there's some people, and it was shocking. This building was new, that's how old I am. And it was the best time I've ever had, and it was fantastic. I did a placement in London, I've been in London before. I did 6 months at David Davis Associates. You won't know them, but you'll know Next, you'll know British Airways. They did all these amazing brands and retail stuff, it was fantastic. Graduated in 1990, very similar to Abby, I got offered a job straight away at the Chase. So I was there as well for about a couple of years. Similar to Abby, I left with somebody who was doing work for a co-op bank at the time. So I worked with them for a bit. And then I got a call in 1995 to join what was the point, or Forepoint as we are now. Now that person that phoned me up was my lecturer here, a person called Simon Bailey, so he was our founder originally. Simon was taught here as well, so we've got this long history with the Polytechnic and the university, which carries on to today. We've got, there's 21 of us, there's probably at least near half of those are all Preston graduates. We've had placements, I'd say Abby was one of those. Over the years, we do obviously set briefs for the final years, we're doing bursaries for the first, second year. So it's a relationship that we've kind of built over a lot of time. So we love it here, we're part and parcel of this, and it's the kind of lifeblood of what we do as a business. That's me and us.
So, what's our talk about today? So, it is about this topic, which is triskaidekaphobia.
Say that again.
Triskaidekaphobia. I've got this one nailed.
I know you are.
I've got this one nailed. I'm saying it in my sleep. So no, you've not walked into a medical seminar. This is a topic that's going to be hopefully be.
Look at that.
Ooh.
Look at that. I like that.
Very impressive.
Yeah.
So, would you take?
I'm going to give you a book for that. Right, I'll just make it finished.
Yeah, done.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no spoilers, but.
So, would you take a flight on Friday the 13th?
I did.
No.
I actually did. When was it? Friday the 13th, funny enough. I was in Austria, coming back from a little holiday, flying out of Innsbruck, took off, and they switched the lights off at the airport, and they closed all the borders, and a week later, we had a pandemic. So I've never flown again on Friday the 13th, so that's not my little.
Would you live in a house number 13?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. No choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point, well made.
I think I'd happily live in a house called number 13, but I'm not sure about flying on Friday the 13th.
Don't do it.
But if you do have these sorts of fears, as our friend at the front here said, there's a name for this, the fear of the number 13, and this is called triskaidekaphobia.
3 times you said that beautifully.
So interestingly, most airlines such as Lufthansa, Virgin Atlantic and Ryanair, they all skip row 13 because nobody wants to book a seat on that row. Some skyscrapers, they don't have a floor number 13. Well, they obviously have the floor, but they don't call it number 13.
It's not a gap
Not just a
in the
gap. And apparently the 2 largest elevator makers in the world, Otis and Cone, say that they offer building owners the option to omit the number 13 in their elevators. So there's lots of other random fears.
Yeah, have you got that?
Yeah. Okay, there's lots of other random fears. Obviously, our talk, the catalyst for our talk is Conference Week, the theme is 13. There's lots of other random fears. Apologies to the lady
It'll
at
be
the
gone
front
soon, don't
who's
worry.
hiding. So this one, the fear of clowns. This is the fear called choleraphobia.
We have got somebody at work, so at this moment in time we have a Tuesday tea break at work, so we all have a little bit of a chat online and together. And I've used this because one of the people we work with, Jade, who she might watch this, he's a bit like this lady here. Scared to death of clowns. No idea why, but she is. So I apologise, Jade, and take a good time.
Right, you can look at that.
That's fine.
This is a weird one. So this is called trypophobia. So this is the fear of a cluster of small holes. And this is a real thing. Dave Flanagan, who's an illustrator that you may have seen at previous conference week,
Last year,
Dave
Scared to death
has
of holes.
trypophobia. Yeah, a fear of the clusters of small holes. So he would be cowering in the back to see that sponge.
like this one.
This one,
It's a thing.
pogonophobia. This is a fear of beards.
So you might not, maybe it's not Andy you don't like, maybe it's his beard that you don't like.
Yeah, maybe. And then the last one.
Go on, are you going to pronounce it?
Oh my
Hippopotamonstrosepidaliophobia. That one.
That one? Any ideas what that might be?
Clues in the, what do you think it?
It's not a fear of hippos.
Fear of long words.
The fear of
The
long
irony,
words.
the irony, the fear of long words.
Yeah, so anyway, hopefully you're all suitably confused and wondering what the hell we're talking about. But
There's a point to it, isn't there?
yeah, there's a point to it. So you watch this short video, then hopefully it's going to make more sense.
Not fine.
Yeah, no.
We did have a problem.
But hopefully it's woken you all up if nothing else. But this is what we're going to be talking about, which is fear, which is obviously spun off from the fear of number 13. So we decided that we weren't going to talk about our work, but try and give you some advice for life. So we're going to be talking specifically about fear and fear within the creative industry, and most importantly, why you guys should not be afraid. Also, a special thank you to Keith for insisting that we use the official terms for these words, so I have a load of ridiculous words to announce
You've done a great job so far.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, first up, glossophobia. Anyone, any idea what this is? I'll give you a clue, it is not the fear of shiny things.
Anybody?
Sorry.
They don't. Somebody emailed that in. Go on.
No? Okay, so glossophobia, this is the fear of public speaking. So firstly, Keith and I are both a little bit nervous to be here ourselves, stood up talking to you guys. Luckily, a full studio, thank you all for coming. But study after study confirms that the fear of public speaking is actually our single greatest fear. it is higher up on the list than death. And the main reason that we fear public speaking is because we feel judged and we feel exposed.
Not literally, obviously.
I'm not sure anyone enjoys public speaking. I mean, look at Keith's face when I told him what I'd roped us into today.
I wasn't going to be here, but I'm here.
He's here,
I'm
moral
scared
support.
stiff, though.
So if you suffer from glossophobia, rest assured that it's super normal. Just a quick show of hands for anyone that suffers from glossophobia, the fear of public speaking. Just put your hand up if you feel that fear. Yeah, so I reckon that's probably 50% of the room, so you're definitely not alone.
And those that say you're not, probably are, you just not have been here, that's what I reckon.
Yeah, or you've not had to sit here and do this.
Exactly.
So glossophobia can take many forms, ranging from slight nervousness through to this paralysing fear and panic, throw in the middle a nervous poo or a tactical vomit, and that pretty much covers the whole spectrum. But with preparation and persistence, you can overcome it. So in the creative industry, when might you need to speak in front of people? Unfortunately, it is all the time. So you might be sharing ideas with your team, you might be presenting ideas to clients, you might be pitching for work, talking through your portfolio in an interview to try and secure a job or a placement, or you might get blagged into doing a conference week presentation like Keith and I. So some tips to cover to help you overcome glossophobia. So know your subject. So you will speak with passion if you know what you're talking about. If you're presenting your work, your portfolio, or other ideas, talk about the things that you're excited about. We're fortunate enough to do a lot of work with students, and one of the main things that we say when we brief students is that we want you to be able to produce a piece of work that you're proud of and you can talk confidently about in an interview. The more you care about a topic, the less likely you are to go off track. And if you do get lost, which is easily done, you can generally recover quickly because you're talking about something that you're passionate about. And also, people see through bullshit, excuse the language, like people can see through that. So if you don't believe in what you're presenting, then that's going to come across in your presentation as well. So recently, I participated in I don't know what you'd call it, a programme called School of Thought. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. If you're in advertising, then I would check it out. I actually won at School of Thought last year, so thank you. But when I did School of Thought, the reason that I did that is because I wanted to give myself a bit of a kick up the backside when I'd returned from maternity leave. And I also wanted to practice the opportunity to pitch, because quite a lot of the work that we do now, we do quite a lot of work on Teams. We talk to quite a lot of clients through a screen, which is completely different to standing in front of an audience. And I knew that one of my most nervous pitches was going to be for a guy called James Cross, who owns the agency Meanwhile. He used to be the creative director at the BBC. So when I saw that he was on our list of 12 people that we would have to present to, I decided that I was going to do that presentation with no notes and no visuals and hope for the best, because I knew that was going to be the person I was going to be most nervous in front of. And I did it, and it went really, really well, but it could have gone completely tits up. It was risky, but I believed in my idea so much and I was so passionate about it, and I knew my idea inside out, that I knew that I could do it. So I think it's about having that confidence that I could deliver. Just click. Doesn't like me. Oh, I feel like I've missed one. Sorry.
Oh, this is
So-
this is my favourite bit. This is pee, puke, or pass out. They're the three things.
No,
No?
that's not what it is.
I was hearing that was
Yes,
it.
that's what happens when you public speak. I've just been in there, and it's pee, puke, pass out. That's what happens when you speak in public. It's a fact.
No, that's not what it is.
What is it then, Abby?
Okay, so it stands for plan, prep and practice. So not as exciting as PP you can pass out. So plan, so if you do have to speak publicly, and that can be in a room like this, or it can be one-to-one in an interview. So plan the structure, plan the headline, key points and takeaways. No, that is not cheesy chips. That is the things that you want people to take away from what you are saying to them. The preparation, so give yourself time to create or write a presentation that you're proud of. Don't rush it, because if you rush it, then you're not going to feel confident when you're talking about it. and practice. So I, for one, I always talk to myself in the car. This morning I was driving here and I was saying bits of this out loud. I talk to myself at home with the door shut when I'm working and I'm practicing what I'm going to say to a client. I preempt the kind of questions that I'm going to get asked and then I answer them out loud. It's really important to practice speaking out loud because you might write a presentation, you might write notes, like this document is full of notes, but you might write it and then when you read it, it doesn't sound like you speak. So it's really important to practice speaking it out loud because you can also practice where you're going to put emphasis into things, or maybe you might say something out loud that makes sense on paper and then when you say it you think, well that's rubbish, that doesn't make sense, or it's not conveying the message that I need to get across. So you need to see each presentation or even just conversations as practice because everyone is human and everyone will understand if you fluff a little bit. Or there is an alternate version which is a high risk strategy. Wait until the last minute, throw it all together and wing it. Some people actually buzz off working this way, but if you're feeling nervous, which a lot of you will, plan, prep, practice.
Or puke, pass out.
Yeah, it's your friend.
Yes. Now, Abby was talking about the way the sheep did things with the school of thought. That's one way of doing it. You need to really know your stuff. But a friend of mine, a guy called Ian Scott, sorry Ian, if you're watching, he's a massive retail guy. He's like really into his stuff. He travels around the world and assesses all sorts of stores and about just loads of reports about the high street and the state of the nation as far as retail is concerned. Really clever guy. He's just brilliant. He's been in it for years and he got offered a spot to do a TED talk. And he was like blown away, because TED talk's it, isn't it? Your 15, 20 minutes of fame and he was, right, I've got this nailed, I know exactly what I'm going to do. So he must have had about 3 months to work this presentation out. And he said, right, I'm going to do it like they all do on telly. As in, no notes, it's all in here. It'll be so natural, I'll nail it. And he practiced for those 3 months with his other half. He was, like Abby was saying, talking to himself in cars, just memorising things and just repeating. Exactly the way you should do it. And it was a couple of weeks ago, and he got up on stage and he stood in front of a very, very big crowd and completely blanked. He could not remember a thing about what he was going to present. And 2 things happened. First thing, everybody stood up and gave him a massive round of applause. And then one of his guys that was working in the wings brought his laptop on, like how he's got there, with all his notes, all his information on, and he just did it from there. He was gutted because clearly you don't want that to happen, but plan B is always a good one. I'm a bit like that. I have a plan A, plan B, plan C, probably a D as well. This is probably hiding in the toilets. And it's really important that you do that. And I think that the other thing I think was the CEO thing. The other thing that I experienced was even when you've got a laptop. So I did a presentation to it was a CEO of this big government kind of IT sort of setup. All these really important people in the room. And we took our laptop, we had our backup on hard drive and a little Wizzy drive thing. And racked up there, half an hour in advance, we're in half an hour early. Always do that, test your IT also. Could not get the stuff working. For the life of us, then you had these sort of 12 important people in the room. And I ended up, the only good thing was I took A3 printouts of all the things that were on the slides. I literally had to put them on the floor, and I was literally just kind of down here, and, excuse me, getting a bit old. And I had the stuff here, and I had all these guys stood around me, and I was literally had to walk through the presentation on my knees in front of, well, essentially I was doing this, presenting the stuff, and I looked up and the CEO was stood there. He's a massive Scottish bloke who doesn't say anything, he just stared at me like that. And I'm like you do. And he just went, I like it. And that was it. That's all he got from it. But so that was my plan C, really. So there's lots of scenarios, you never know what's going to happen. And it's just little anecdotes like that, that's just the real world.
Yeah.
Oh, Dave. You got a preview of Dave. Dave's he's on the top of my man crush list. I'd marry him if I was already married. The reason he's got up there is because we talked about this before, and Abby touched on it earlier. Anybody play instruments? Anybody play guitar or piano or anything like that? Yeah, ish. Not necessarily well, but None of you would get on the stage without practice, would you? You would not rack up and go, well, I've just bought a guitar, let's get on the stage at Glastonbury and just a couple of tunes. What you do is you practice, then you practice some more, and you practice some more, and you keep going, you keep going. You might not be perfect, but you'd definitely be better than you were. And it's really interesting, with something like that, that's just like a natural thing you would do. But we need to do the same as when you're doing speaking, when you're doing presenting. The more you practice, the slightly better you get.
I was just thinking it'd be quite nice if someone took a photo of you with Dave Grohl, because that might be your only opportunity.
I know, you've seen it, haven't you?
I have.
Close
When
up.
so when I did School of Thought, the winner of School of Thought wins a trip to Cannes, to the Cannes Lions, to the Festival of Creativity, and on the beach they have different gigs. Obviously they didn't know who I was because I wasn't invited into the gig, but you can see from the promenade area, so I did actually send Keith some pictures of Dave, just to wind him up. But similar to what Keith was saying, so if you're doing a sport such as gymnastics, athletics, football, you train some more, which is the story of my life actually, because my middle daughter Sylvie, she's a competitive gymnast, she's 11, she trains 20 hours a week. She practices, she does 4 hours after school nearly every single day, and then she goes to competitions, and the competition, obviously she'd like to come away with a medal, frequently she doesn't, but it's a practice at the competition as well. So they make mistakes, you learn and you try again. Creating ideas, presenting and public speaking is very, very similar. It's a very similar kind of performance, and practice makes progress. Progress being the key word, because nobody is ever perfect at it.
Not from me.
Definitely not me. So different people find different ways to deal with the fear of public speaking, but everyone has to start at the same point. And the point that you start at is facing your fear. It's very, very easy to just say, oh no, I don't do public speaking, I can't do that. And you will stay in that position forever. But if you do want to be able to do that, then you have to face that fear, which is absolutely petrifying. But remember, the more that you do it, the easier that it gets. And each time you do it, you're one step further away from that fear. One thing that helps me in my portfolio, in the corner, so I have an A3 printed portfolio. I don't have one of these snazzy digital portfolios that you guys have probably all got. But in the corner of the portfolio, on every single page, I've always got a tiny, I'm talking like 8-point type, in the corner, just a little bit, a couple of notes, bullet points, just in case, when I'm talking through my work, my mind goes blank. Or maybe there's something really important about that project that is one of my takeaways, one of the things that I really want to deliver on. And even though it's maybe a really important point, you could still gloss over it because it's natural to you, but whoever you're showing this to is seeing it for the first time. If you've won any awards, have those listed there. That really helps me. And during client presentations, I always have notes. I always have everything written down just so that I can refer back to it.
I think sometimes it's just a matter of maybe 3 bullet points. It doesn't have to be War and Peace. I mean, we've got a lot of notes on there, and now we'll be using those as prompts. And I did it as well, but I don't like to read. But you do get those moments where your mind empties. So I think just having, if you've just got, 3 is a good number. 3 is a really good number because you can remember 3 things, get 4 things, I forget stuff. So 3 things, the most important 3 things about that you need to remember to say, just stick them in a bullet point, and you've got them, and it'll work.
Okay, so next advice is to breathe. So you're not going to get very far if you do one of those 3 P's before, which is passing out. So if you forget to breathe, it's likely that you're going to start to stutter and stumble, you're going to confuse yourself. Take your time. It's not a race. Remember that whoever is listening to you is listening to you for the first time. So you need to give them time to digest what you're saying. If you speak too fast, they're not going to remember anything at all. You also need to remember to speak loudly enough. It's very, very easy to speak at your normal pitch, but actually you need to raise it up a little bit if you're talking to other people. Be honest. So it's perfectly okay to tell people that you're a little bit nervous. You might go into an interview, you might be sat talking to colleagues, you might be talking to a client, and it's perfectly okay to say, I'm a little bit nervous about this. And by doing that, you're going to put yourself at ease, but you're also going to get them on your side as well. It'll make you feel a little bit less nervous. And as I was saying before, keep your language simple. Use the language that you would use in everyday conversation, because this shows your authenticity and your personality shines through as well. All that business talk is nonsense really for us. Like, we call it corporate blanding. It's that language that people assume that they're meant to use in business, but you'd never really talk like that in real life. People buy people, so be authentic to yourself. I actually had an email of a student.
Oh, you did? Yes.
Yeah, and it was about a placement, and I hope he's not in the room today. He emailed me, and he used AI to write an email to me to ask about a work placement, and he referenced our esteemed organisation and all of this other fancy stuff, and I just read it and I thought,
he's not written that.
one, that's really lazy. Like, maybe if you're going to use AI, maybe use it to give you an idea of what you could say, but don't then just copy it verbatim and reply in this. He sounded like he should be turning over the quill and a pair of velvet trousers or something. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
But it's true, we'll go back to your point about the corporate branding stuff. So a lot of our work is in business to business stuff, so it's not your retail stuff, it's not like your Nike and Apple, all that sort of stuff. We work in what you would class as quite difficult industries, so like the defence industry, work in the nuclear industry, and the technologies. And like I say, they use this kind of culture where you're supposed to speak in a certain way. And our job is to cut through that, because at the end of the day, they're all human beings. They're like us, but there's this kind of idea that you're supposed to speak in a certain way. And I think if you try and do that, you come unstuck. Like that email, definitely is a good example.
Yeah, definitely. Because he didn't get a placement.
We're not esteemed enough, are we?
No, because I'm not an esteemed individual. Also, don't fear silence. There's this thing when people are talking and they get nervous and they start to panic and they go, Actually, if you learn and train yourself to replace those nervous noises with a silent pause, it actually gives you time to reset your brain, and it also gives the audience time to consider what you're saying. So just pause if and when you need to, because it is a natural part of speaking, and listeners also really need that. So, what do these two people have in common?
Other than that, his ex-husband. Both of them. It's amazing.
They are not my ex-husband.
They are, guaranteed.
I don't even have one ex-husband, never mind either a millionaire. I mean, that would be great. I wouldn't be sat here if I had an ex-husband that was a millionaire. Interestingly, they both suffer from glossophobia. So, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So when Arnie came to the US, he could hardly speak a word of English. He wasn't a charismatic presenter, he knew very few phrases, and he was completely unknown outside the realm of bodybuilding. But instead of shying away from the microphone, he actually sought out every single opportunity that he could have to speak in public, making gradual improvements and focusing on little victories that only he would feel himself. And also, importantly, he visualised himself as a great speaker. And step by step, little by little, he transformed himself from this one-dimensional Terminator into the charismatic governor of one of the wealthiest states in one of the wealthiest states in the United States, California. And then Mark Zuckerberg, my second husband. So, super smart, founder of one of the most valuable companies in the history of the world, pretty much single-handedly popularised the world of social media. You would naturally assume that Mark Zuckerberg is probably a brilliant public speaker, probably really, really confident, but he's not. Apparently, at a conference not that long ago, he was described as literally dissolving in a puddle of his own sweat. Yeah. So, our next fear. So, atychiphobia. No, it is not the fear of small things. Does anyone know what this one is? No?
Go on. Atychiphobia? No? I'll be impressed if you...
You've already impressed us, you don't need to know them all. So atychiphobia, so this is the fear of failure. So the fear of failure, or atychiphobia, involves the belief that you are not good enough, or that you will never be good enough, that you will disappoint yourself and others around you. So that could be your colleagues, it could be your employer, it could be your family. And it can take the form of a really overwhelming fear of dread that can interfere with any project or the pursuit of any of your life goals, personal or professional. But this is really, really common in our industry. Because unfortunately in our industry, we are bombarded with people's opinions on our work. Everyone has an opinion. They don't always know the history and the background of a project, but they just look at the end result, and everyone loves to slate other people's work. But the biggest lesson here is that not everybody is going to like everything that you do, and that's okay. So there might be something that I absolutely love, Keith might think it's absolutely crap. And that's okay, because design, creativity is subjective. It's not maths. There's no final solution. There's no right or wrong. It's all about personal preferences and opinions. So if someone doesn't like what you've done, don't take that to heart. That's completely fine, because for every person that doesn't like it, there is someone that does. So just a quick show of hands. Who is afraid of failure? Yeah, so we're probably on maybe like 80% there, so that's really, really common. So what can we do to sorry, I don't know how to turn it off, and I don't mess with it. What can we do to decrease our fear of failure? So one of the really important things that you can do is nurture something called a growth mindset. So a growth mindset means that you're embracing challenges. And part of having a growth mindset is about accepting failure as part of the journey. It's not something that should be avoided. People with a growth mindset, which is different, I must say, to a positive mindset. A growth mindset is where you believe that you can learn from experience, good or bad, and then you can develop the skills and improve with practice.
Failure. Yeah, when we were talking about this, and you start thinking about it, it's weird what you see and what you pick up when you're talking about a subject. And failure, I think societally, it's just one of those things, especially social media. Everybody's having an amazing time, aren't they? Everybody's got it nailed. Everybody's got a lovely lifestyle, go on holidays, they've got lovely families, they've got a great job, they've got kids, they're doing all this amazing stuff. Nobody ever talks about the shit stuff that goes on. They just push that out. Apart from the media, they love a good failure, don't they? Look at the amount of kickings that anybody that's relatively famous get, or politicians get for making mistakes. We all make mistakes, but they love that kicking. So I think failure, by its nature, is instilled like it's a bad thing, like it's a terrible thing, that nobody should fail. If you fail, that's you done. And it's the complete opposite.
Yeah, you're cancelled.
Yeah, but it's the complete
Which
opposite.
is absolute nonsense. If you've got a growth mindset, you actually want to be welcoming failure. So failure, as I said before, is part of learning and part of growing, and it's better to try and to fail than to not try at all. So it's really important that you redefine what failure actually is. Failure is not this negative thing. Failure is just part of the process. So an important part of overcoming that fear of failure is developing this new perspective around it. So instead of looking at failure as this life-destroying disaster, you need to develop this new relationship. So you've got to shift your thinking about it and begin to see failure as a chance to grow and a chance to learn. Part of that is giving yourself permission to fail. And it's actually really, really hard to do, because you've got to allow yourself to be vulnerable. So you've got to move out of that safe space and allow you to expose yourself to, new and uncertain things. So that can be a little bit terrifying, but it also can be quite liberating. The best thing that you can do is ask yourself, what is the worst possible outcome of the failure? Would you survive? Quite likely you would survive. You discover that the worst case scenario is not that bad. So just go for it, try it, and then continue to move forward with more knowledge than when you started, rather than staying in that start position and not ever improving.
I think that's a good point about the thought of failure, or the thought of something. The thought of doing this is way worse than actually doing it, and I think that's what you find with most stuff. And the fear of failure is the thing that drives that. What if it all goes wrong? What if a massive disaster? Brain freeze, can't remember anything. But more often than that, I would say 99% of the time, doing the real thing is not as bad as the thought of it. Your brain works overtime. I think I was doing it last night. I was running through this presentation and thinking about it. Got into bed, your brain's going, yeah, but what if that happens? What if you forget this? What if you don't know? And there's things I'm going to forget. You probably don't know that I've forgotten them.
Yeah, no one knows you've forgotten them.
But it happens. So the thought is much worse than reality.
Yeah. So the thing with mistakes is you obviously want to try and avoid making the same mistake repeatedly, because the whole purpose is that you learn and you improve. But you can and you will make lots and lots of mistakes. You'll make multiple mistakes, but that'll lead to multiple improvements and multiple successes. As Keith said, in our culture people only talk about success. It's a bit of a cultural failure because no one's really talking about what went wrong. Keith and I have cocked up loads of times in our career.
Many times.
Yeah, and we're still here, we're still standing, we're still doing it. So just try and look at failure as an opportunity. So Michael Jordan once said, I can accept failure, everyone fails in something, but I cannot accept not trying. So what I want you to take away from that is, don't just not try because you're scared it's going to go wrong, because what if it goes right? Keith, you had a point here. Yeah.
It's going to go wrong now, isn't it? What's my point? What's my point?
This, I'll just show you the note.
Oh yeah, that one.
This is our
Yeah,
notes.
no, this, I think a lot of these stuff, so we'll come on to this at the end as well, but a lot of the failures, it's all part, we're all, these creative animals that we are, it's kind of part of your kind of inbuilt angst to constantly kind of worry about failure, because we're in a position like you have to constantly improve. So you have a great idea, you go, oh, I nailed this, and then you go, that's great, oh, now I've got to do another one, and then another one, and another one, and it's a constant pressure that we put on ourselves to improve, but that's how we improve. So the idea that you might fail just keeps you on your toes. It's that little adrenaline rush, that all that stuff that you get like going on stage, you know, that kind of the nervousness is the thing that makes you perform better. The challenge is just not to make it overwhelming. As soon as you get overwhelmed, it becomes debilitating and it stops you. But that, I think that the fear of failure is a good thing, because it, like I said, keeps you trying, like good old Mike said there. And we've got to do that, and that's part of our kind of slightly warped kind of mindset as creative people, that these kind of fears and these kind of angst that we talk about are part of our makeup.
Yeah, and then there's the opposite end of the spectrum as well, isn't there, where it goes really well and
Yeah.
people love what you
Well,
create.
we had it was a presentation before Christmas, wasn't it, to a tech company,
That was so good.
and we went through all of this. So we had 3 ideas. We put all this stuff together. We were like, this, you know, we're happy with this, but you check, you double check. You go, have we got this right? Have we missed something? You know, what's going on? And we went on this call. The guys were in America, weren't they, in New York, and we presented this stuff. And at the end, you know, obviously you're on screens, so you're going, can we read this? I'm not sure what's going on. And the guy just said, he said, that's the best presentation I've ever seen. And we looked at each other and went,
Yeah, when we got off the call, we were both like,
I mean, honestly, it's, you talk about a curve. You've got this kind of fear of failure down here, and you've got this absolute high when you nail it, or when somebody else, because again, it's this kind of, you know, you think you've got it right, but when somebody else gets it too, it just joins everything together. So that high, the 2 extremes are massive, but you can't have one without the other. So it's this strange roller coaster that you have to kind of accept.
you're always worried when you're presenting to a client. You might believe in your work, or you might think that you've had a great idea, but if the client doesn't get it, you know, that can hit
It's
hard.
heartbreaking. I was just going to say, I was thinking last night, sorry, I do this every now and again, having an idea is a bit like having a kid and having a child. I don't know if you've got any children, but they're really precious and they're yours. And if somebody goes, don't like that, you get really mortally offended because it's
Defensive
you
as well.
put everything into it. And it's very hard to kind of separate yourself from your ideas. But sometimes you have to, so you've got to try and take a step back. And it's great when somebody says, your kids are amazing, they're fantastic. But it doesn't happen all the time, so some of the times you do have to be really careful about how you sort of balance that up.
So this leads me on to our next fear, which is creativophobia.
Did you make this up? How we go?
Yes.
Okay.
I couldn't find, there must be a word for it, but I feel like mine works better, so we're going to put this into the Oxford English Dictionary. So, creativophobia, anyone got a clue what that might be?
Fear of creativity.
Say again?
Fear of creativity.
Not quite.
Not quite. I mean, obviously I've made this word up, so you're not going to know what it is. But, if anyone's from the dictionary is here, creativophobia is a fear of running out of ideas. So this is a real thing, this is what all creatives feel, because at the end of the day, we make our money on thinking of ideas, we make our money out of our creativity. So it's really common to panic that you might run out of ideas, you might run out of ability. But creativity is this weird ethereal thing that just seems out of our control. I don't know if your parents have ever said to you, "Oh, Abby, I don't know where you get your ideas from." Neither do I, Dad. Not at all. It's this weird thing that just seems to happen to us. This weird special skill that we've got. We don't seem to have a say in the matter. So hands up to anyone who worries that they're going to run out of ideas, that maybe they can't build a career out of this.
It's quite high.
Yeah, pretty high. So what I'm
It's a
getting
real word. That means it's real.
that means it's real, firstly, and what I'm getting from this is all of these fears that we have discussed is actually pretty common amongst everybody else. Reassuring. So creativity is a gift. Creativity is something that you were born with. Some people were born with natural abilities in different things, such as athletics, sports. Not me. Definitely not Keith. But we both have.
True.
But we both have a natural ability for creativity, and you're in this room, you probably have that natural ability as well. And none of you know how deep that creative well goes. We don't know what we're capable of. We don't know if that's going to run dry, which drives this fear of this creative phobia. But honestly, let me tell you, I don't think I've ever actually met anyone who has really run out of ideas. It's not like you're born with so many ideas and then you use them up over time. Don't worry, Keith, you're going to be okay.
I must be running out by now.
Yeah, sometimes a brief is just much harder to solve. Maybe it wasn't briefed correctly, maybe it's really complicated. Sometimes it needs tackling from a different angle. Maybe it needs sharing around the team and getting other people's involvement. But the brain is like a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And that fear that you've stumbled upon, the last great idea, it can be erased if you just look around and look back and look at all the great ideas that you've generated, and also to recognise your improvements along the way. Like I look back, even at projects on our server, like our design server at work, and think, that was not great. That wasn't the best idea I've ever had. Maybe the thinking was good, but the execution wasn't great. I think that's really a common kind of thing.
I think that absolutely is, and it is that fear, but I think also, we touched on, we're going to talk about the sponge thing. We talked about the sponge thing, is that coming up? But it's not the lack of ideas, it's the lack of inspiration. That's the thing. Obviously, we're like kind of editors. You kind of take some stuff from over there and take some stuff from over here, and you kind of slot them together, and you've got this thing that's an idea. But unless you've got all that inspiration around you, and you're taking in new stuff, and subconsciously or otherwise, then you will kind of run out of ideas. So that's the inspiration is a key part.
Yeah, and it's also really important to note that no idea is a bad idea. So it might be that you don't have the skills to implement it, maybe it's not the right client, maybe you don't have the resources or the time, but that doesn't mean that it's useless. And quite often what we'll do is we'll have an idea and we'll say, let's put that one in the bank.
Yeah.
And that just means we don't really have a bank of ideas, but it's just
We
something.
do. It's in a special safe under the floor.
Oh.
Where we keep all the best ideas.
Oh, none of mine are in there then. But it's just important just to recognise that it wasn't a bad idea. Maybe it wasn't the right time.
One point about that is when we do work for clients, there's never just one idea. There might be a one that you think is right, but what we always do three. So we're working in with people that aren't naturally creative, working in industries that are not used to pushing boundaries and doing things differently. So we always have something that just moves them on a little bit. So you've got a little bit of progress idea. Then you've got your middle ground, which just takes them into a place that they never even thought possible. And then they scare the living daylights out of them with something else that we would never do in a million years. That doesn't make that a bad idea if they don't pick it. It's just not the right time, it's not the right moment. And you find that.
They don't have the confidence.
They don't have the confidence. And I would say most of the time, they go, oh my God, I love that. But that's not us, we can't do that right now. Give them 6 months, give them 12 months, even 2 years, they go, we've got this great idea. Why do we do this? And you go, well, like we said 2 years ago. So it's just about the timing sometimes. So the ideas, they may not be right at that time. Like we said, maybe the execution isn't quite right, or the client isn't quite right for that moment. It doesn't make them bad ideas.
Another thing clients do, all our clients do this, we present 3 ideas and they say, ooh, I really like that one and I like that one. Can I take this bit of that one and this bit of that one? Yeah, Frankenstein route. But we call it, oh yeah, you can do that. Oh, that'd be great. That would be like a super route because that's going to take all the best elements. And you know what, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but quite often it does work because at the end of the day, the client may see something in your idea that you aren't seeing yourself. That's a really good way of sort of testing your ideas. We do that quite a lot, don't we?
Yeah. And sometimes they, you know, if that was a child, you know, they kind of like, they create a hybrid child.
Oh my
'Cause it's-
god, I could have the most amazing child if I blended my 4 children together. But unfortunately, they're in 4 separate human beings.
You got 4 ideas, didn't you?
Yeah, 4 ideas.
Okay.
Yeah. So, a good way to keep those creative juices flowing is to expose yourself. No, stop. That doesn't mean stripping off. It means exposing yourself. Just call it. Expose yourself to as much inspiration as possible. So going back to what Keith said before, you need to be constantly fueling the brain with exposing it to everything. And that's not just looking at design or illustration or animation. It's looking at absolutely everything. It's walking around the world with your eyes open. It's absorbing absolutely everything in. I, for one, spend way too much time looking at other people's work, looking at stuff on the internet. I actually dread to think what my timesheet looks like because it comes to the end of the day and I'm like, what do I put for this hour of just perusing other people's work? I've not been told off yet, so I think it's okay. Looking for professional work, Pinterest, LinkedIn, design blogs, design magazines, all really, really great for this. And like I say, keep your eyes open, soak everything up like a great big
But I
sponge.
think also the other side is stuff that, like saying, might not think. I going to the theatre, went to the theatre on a couple of weeks ago to see Hamilton, and just watching that, how they put on a performance and what they do. I don't know what that's going to bring as far as an idea is concerned, but it was bloody brilliant. I go to gigs. I went to see Ladybird. I was down in Bath, and Ladybird Books had a little exhibit, and it was just amazing. And those things, they're in there. I'm probably one in, one out at the moment with ideas, with the sort of thinking and things that I absorb. But you never know where those things come from. And I think, ironically, I was watching TV just when we decided to do this. Anybody seen Inside Number 9? It's a comedy series by the League of Gentlemen guys. And the episode was about whatever the word is, big long word for Friday the 13th, the fear of Friday the 13th. I don't even know what it is. That's close, but it's fear of Friday the 13th. It's even longer. But that's what I mean, it was just there, it was pure coincidence, but your brain is starting to think about stuff. So obviously I was thinking about this, because we're talking about fears, and that popped up. Just happened, couldn't have made that one.
So also, some other advice on this topic. So listen, it's really, really important in our industry to listen. So listen more than talk. You need to watch, you need to observe, you need to absorb. We always try to over-deliver. So we always try to give a client more than they expected. We like to wow a client because that feels good for us. A really, really important one here is not to be afraid of asking stupid questions. So we've rephrased this as intelligent naivety.
Absolutely, yeah.
So asking stupid questions or questions that you fear might make you look stupid, they're actually the most important questions that everyone else in the room is too afraid to ask. Stupid questions avoid mistakes, misunderstandings and miscommunications.
You can guarantee, I've done it with clients before, where they're talking about stuff and they're talking this corporate spiel and this kind of corporate branding. And I'm sitting there going, no idea what you just said. They're talking acronyms, they're talking...
I don't think they even know themselves.
No, and I just go, well, you know, you go, well, I don't quite get that, could you explain it again? And you can see people in the room, oh my God, yes, that. Because it's just human nature. You think everybody else knows and everybody else understands. They don't. And it just takes a bit of confidence just to go, well, what's the worst that can happen? Going back to what Abby said, well, they just repeat themselves. So if they said it before or you didn't quite get it, will you get it next time?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely this power and confidence in the ability to ask a stupid question and to be vulnerable and to put your hand up and say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that, can you just rephrase that or just try and explain that in a different way because it's not meaning anything to me. The only stupid question is the one that is asked after the cock-up has happened. So get it in beforehand. And,
when it's too late.
Yeah, exactly, when it's too late. Like Pete said before, like we work in some really, really complex industries. So we work in the tech industry, we work with nuclear, we work with government, we work with defence, and they use the wildest language that I've ever come across. Like they talk in acronyms, so everything's like... Yeah, a whole sentence in an acronym, like something like, oh, you know, if you've been down to MHP, we're going to look at the UCO and then we're going to...
LLWR
yeah.
on the left there.
Yeah, and you just sat there like,
no.
This is like another language, like this doesn't mean anything to anyone. So our job is, we kind of act as this filter, so we act as this filter between the client and whoever they're talking to. So the client might be talking to staff, and maybe the staff don't know what the people at the top are talking about. Maybe maybe it's an outward conversation and they're talking to the public and they're assuming that the public might know what they're talking about. They don't. And if people don't understand, our whole industry is about communication. Our job is to be able to communicate and distill what they're saying and filter it and then push it out the other end into something that anybody could understand. You could show it to your gran and your gran would get the key takeaways.
I mean, one of the important things that we find is, like I say, you'll have a conversation, very rarely do we get a brief. Our job is to get the brief.
Teasing it out.
And teasing it out. And that brief is the simple explanation of what you've actually got to do. And it's amazing how many times that you have to do that. But like Abby said, how can we as creators and designers and communicators explain something if we don't get it? So our job is we have to be experts in.
Yeah, I love that. Like, a lot of people at uni, maybe you guys, want a really sexy job, maybe going and doing some like really cool design work for Nike or something. Whereas my job is not very sexy, but it's brilliant because we work in so many varied industries, and if you're interested in actually doing effective communication, you can really dig deep into the client's world. When I was at the Chase, one of our clients, he was a guy that was head of the marketing and design for a carpet tile factory. Now, carpet tiles don't sound very interesting, but I'll tell you something, if you start looking into carpet tiles and how they're produced, how they're made, all the durability, all the different materials, all the different patterns, it actually, if you're going to make effective communication, you need to get into that client's world. I love working on carpet tiles. I love working on nuclear because it's so complicated, it's wildly complicated, and for me to be able to take that wild, complicated thing and put something out at the end that everyone can understand, and it's not scary anymore, and it's not intimidating, and people get on board with it and they get excited about it, that for me is a really, really, really good job, rather than taking something that's already shiny and making it a bit more shiny.
Most definitely, and it's like being a translator really. Imagine you've got one language and you're trying to translate it to another language. As soon as you achieve that, you can see the light bulbs go on. You can see people go, oh, that's what you meant. And like I say, it's as much as you probably said this before, trying to strip things back. So part of the process of us is stripping things back to the basic, not dumbing it down, but getting the components right. Because then when you've got the basic components of your story, you can then explain it. That's when all the magic trickery comes in about how you're going to do it, and the execution and the creativity, all that good stuff. But you need to understand that story, and you need to be able to tell it to somebody else. I used to use my mum, God rest her soul. I used to explain stuff, and she'd go, that's what you do.
Yeah, when we were at the Chase,
yeah.
You do an idea, and they'd say, go and show it to the LCD. And the LCD was Sandy, and Sandy was a lady who was about, I feel like she was about 70 when I was there. She probably wasn't, but she used to do all like admin and timesheets. She was wild. If you've ever met her, she was a crazy lady. But she had no design background, and we'd go and show it to her, and the LCD stands for the lowest common denominator.
Did she know that?
I think she knew. I think so. I think she did. I think she embraced her role with the LCD. But it was a joke, and it was meant with nice. That's not a word. But we go and show Sandy, and if Sandy understood it, then that was great. So moving on, imposter syndrome, thankfully not a complicated word. So imposter syndrome, it's that awful, uncomfortable feeling when you feel like you're unqualified, feel like you're incompetent. You might look around and assume that everybody knows what they're doing except you. And if you achieve something really good, you don't take that achievement, you chalk that achievement and that accomplishment up to good luck. It's about feeling like a fraud, it's about feeling like you don't belong or that you're going to get found out. So hands up if anyone's experienced imposter syndrome. Me. I mean, I've not put my hand up for any of these, but it should have been for them all. I've been scrolling. I do have all of these fears. Yeah, so imposter syndrome is really, really common in this industry. So apparently 70 to 80% of people are thought to suffer from imposter syndrome, and I bet that the other 20 to 30% are probably lying. So how can we be afraid, and how can we do it anyway? Does fake it till you make it really work? So you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So going back to the nurturing that growth mindset again, don't just stay where it's comfortable, because if you stay where it's comfortable, you'll never make any progress. This is how we grow and learn, by being uncomfortable, by embracing failure. So I mentioned before about faking it till you make it. So that's quite a good way of doing things. So it's sort of practicing that skill and confidence as you stretch into this uncharted territory. So sort of almost visualising like Arnold Schwarzenegger did, that you can do it, and just doing it. And do you know what? Sometimes it might not work, but sometimes it might. And if it doesn't work, then learn from why it didn't work and use that to boost yourself next time.
That comes back to the sport thing we're talking about as well. For football and stuff, you get a striker that putting in like a dozen goals, and suddenly they have a drought. They don't suddenly turn into a bad footballer. It's usually a mental thing. It's a belief, it's the confidence. You fill somebody with confidence and belief, not arrogance, but confidence and belief, they can do amazing things. So it's just the head's going, no, don't do this. And everybody does it better than me. And I would say the majority of the room will go, everybody does this better than me, including me.
Yeah. So an important one here is to stop comparing yourself. So don't compare yourself to others, don't compare yourself to the guys that are in the class with you. You need to be clear about what you want, because when you start to look at yourself as an individual who's got skills and experiences to offer, you can stay focused on your own path, and you can decide what you want to learn and where you want to grow and what you want to contribute to your career. If you're constantly comparing yourself to others, that is going to take the wind out of your sails. But if you focus on developing your own passion and your own skills, that is what's going to propel you forwards. So an important part of this is being able to focus on your strengths. So many people aren't aware of their biggest strengths. A good way to find out what your strengths are is to get feedback. So get feedback from your colleagues, from the guys that you're in class with, from your tutor, from your family. People that have seen you in action, they'll have an opinion of you and they'll know what your strengths are, even if you don't know yourself. Another important thing is to celebrate your wins. So if you don't see the value in what you are offering, then you're probably not celebrating your wins. But celebrating your wins, even the smallest win, can really boost your confidence, and it can help you recognise that you are improving and that you are adding value and that you are making a difference. Keith's got a funny story here about some 6-year-old.
Oh God, I forgot about that. I was trying to block that one out. Yeah, I was asked to go and do a presentation. A friend of mine is a primary school teacher in Preston. And she said, oh, can you come and talk to me kids, and what 6-year-old, what year that is, about art and design and stuff. And I went, yeah, of course I was doing it as a drunk at the time. And said, yeah, of course I can. And as it got closer and closer, I was just getting terrified. I mean, 6-year-olds. There was 2 classes of 36-year-olds. And I thought, and all I had to do was talk to them about art and design. And honestly, I was just terrified. I thought they're going to ask me stuff. They're going to ask me things I can't possibly know. It's like you start doubting every single thing about, that you've ever thought, that you've ever been taught. I'm going to forget stuff. They just see right through me. And I remember doing, this little presentation. We're talking about art, design, and colours, and all that sort of stuff, basic things, and printing, things like that. And it came to the questions. And I've got all these little faces kind of sat there looking at us going, right, okay. And then the kid goes, are you married to Miss Sharples? Miss Sharples was the teacher. I went, no, I'm not married to Miss Sharples. Next one. I like your hair. That's not a question, is it?
How long ago was it?
Yeah, all right, okay. And the last one was, do you use a screwdriver? And at that point I thought, why? Because these kids they're brilliantly naive. And why was I getting so kind of het up that these 6-year-olds were going to kind of screw me over? I had the best day of my life, but it terrified me, probably more so than the CEO thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our next fear, this is our second to last fear. So this is atelophobia. So anyone know what this means? No?
This is a real one.
I've not made this up. This is a real word. So this is the fear of making mistakes, of the fear of not being perfect. A little bit similar to the fear of failure. But I wanted to put this in because it is a real fear, and I want to tell you that no one in this industry, no one in the creative industry is perfect. There's no one in the world that's perfect, specifically in the creative industry. Everybody makes mistakes, we all do stupid stuff, it's human nature. But we do have days when nothing we do feels good enough. Sometimes we have weeks. We actually sometimes have months.
I've had 33 years.
And he's still here.
Yeah.
I myself have had periods of time, like when I returned from maternity leave from my recent daughter who's 2.5, I had about 6 months where I just thought, I cannot do this job anymore. Like, it was a horrible, horrible, horrible feeling, which is actually why I ended up doing school of thought. But we learn through our mistakes, and sometimes mistakes even improve things. So, hands up if you are frightened of making mistakes.
I like the honesty. I like the honesty.
Yeah, same. So I have a funny story here. It was when I worked at the Chase. They'd let me out to go and present to a client on my own. The creative director was busy. They were like, oh, Abby, you go up to Yorkshire, go and present. This is to the carpet tile guy, actually. You go up to Yorkshire, you go and present that. I was like, yeah, all right, great. Who am I going with? No one. You're going on your own. I was like, oh, shit, right, okay. I was like, I can do this. I'm all right, I can do this. I was probably 2 or 3 years into my career. So I went, I did the presentation, showed the work. A client was called Darren, really lovely guy. He was really impressed with the work. I'd gone all out. I'd made like full-size mock-ups. It was also with point of sale for carpet, so I made full-size mock-ups. We could go down into the warehouse and we could stick them on and we could see what they were really going to look like. I was really proud of myself. It went really well. And Darren said, oh, do you want me to walk you to your car? I was like, yeah, sure, because it was this big sort of industrial estate. So he walked me to my car, we stood at my car having a chat. I went in my bag to get out my keys, to get in my car. Pulled my keys out of my bag. And something flew out of my bag at force, at speed, and hit him in the chest and dropped to the floor. And I looked down. Any guesses what it might have been? It was a tampon.
Yeah.
I'd just done my first client presentation. It had gone really, really well. And somehow, at the end, I had managed to throw a tampon at the client and hit him in the chest with it. So all of those fears, that fear of failure, there was no point did I ever worry at the end of this presentation I may throw a tampon at the client.
We haven't finished this yet.
Yeah, true.
This time.
I've left my bag at the end of the room,
Okay,
essentially.
good.
So my point here being, you can worry about things, but you can't always worry about the bad thing that may happen. It was quite funny. We both looked down. We both looked at each other. We both burst out laughing. And it just continued to be a bit of a joke every time I saw him. Was I going to throw anything at him today? So it actually worked out okay. Just checking, has anyone else thrown a tampon at anyone before? No, that's interesting. So every time I've asked a question, there's going to be about 80% of the hands up, but it was just me. Okay.
You're special.
I'll give
That's
you all
fine.
time, all you women, I'll give you time. If anyone does ever do that, please get in touch and let me know so I don't feel so alone. So some famous faces up here. So what if these people had let their failure or mistakes shut them down? So the greatest basketball player of all time, Michael Jordan, he was cut from his high school basketball team. Walt Disney, fired from his job at a newspaper because he lacked imagination. Steven Spielberg, rejected from film school 3 times. John Grisham's book, A Time to Kill, was rejected 28 times, which is a lot in the world of publishing. Albert
This is
Einstein,
my favourite.
I love this one.
This is brilliant.
Albert Einstein was labelled mentally slow and it was put on his permanent school record.
I don't know where that leaves the rest of us, but
We've got no chance.
no chance at all.
Henry Ford's first 2 automobile companies failed. Sir James Dyson.
I thought that was Quentin Tarantino at first, but no, it's licensed apparently.
Well, yeah, maybe, if he had a gun in his hand or a big sword or something. Apparently, he suffered through 5,126 failed prototypes before he landed on the first working Dyson vacuum. Now, that is dedication, isn't it? And my favourite one,
Most important one.
Colonel Harlan Sanders, KFC fame, was rejected over 1,000 times before finding a franchise partner.
Am I right, Andy? The first KFC in Preston. It's still there today. I think it's got a plaque and everything, hasn't it? So thank goodness, brilliant.
So, on to our last fear, FOMO. Pretty sure your generation invented this word because this wasn't a thing when I was younger. So we all know what FOMO is. So FOMO, the fear of missing out. So hands up, final one, if you've suffered from FOMO. Personally or in your career as well. So how can FOMO manifest in your career? Actually, it's really easily. It's really prevalent. So right now, you guys, you're all pretty much in the same place in your life. You're all at university, you're all studying, or you should be. But soon things are going to start to shift. Thanks to social media, in particular LinkedIn, you're going to be able to see those shifts in finite detail. Some of you are going to get jobs, you're going to compare job roles, you're going to compare titles, you're going to compare the agency, you're going to compare salary. Some of you are going to have families, some of you are going to get married. Others are going to go travelling for a year, you're going to take a year out. Some of you are just going to graduate and not know what the hell to do with yourself for a while, but you're going to look around, you're going to look at everyone else that seems to have their shit together, and you're going to get FOMO because you're going to feel like you should be doing that. And then over the course of your career, you're going to meet people, you're going to add them on LinkedIn because that's what we do. You're going to look at their life, you're going to look at their bio, you're going to see where they've worked. You're going to compare their journey to yours. LinkedIn's always going to be there to remind you of this. LinkedIn is a great tool. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile and you are going to be looking for a job when you leave, I recommend that you get a LinkedIn profile and get familiar with how it works. It's not complicated at all. Someone is always going to have a better job than you. Someone is always going to be a better agency. Someone's always going to earn more than you. But just as you would with social media and just as you would with your day-to-day life, you've got to learn to recognise that none of this actually matters. So I found this quote which I really liked, that there's no traffic when you're in your own lane. So you have to learn not to compare yourself. There is only one you and your journey is uniquely yours. So people often compare themselves to others without knowing the skills, without knowing the experience, without knowing the sacrifice and the goals of that person. Sacrifice is a really big one here because personally, like I look at other people that have graduated the same time as me, maybe people that were juniors in Manchester the same time as me, and a lot of those people are all creative directors now, whereas I'm a senior designer. I will be a creative director one day. And I get a bit jealous. I get a little bit of FOMO and I think, why have you got that? Like when I was a junior, do you know Craig Oldham that you had in last year? Craig was a junior, Craig's had a brilliant career. Mike Rigby, he was a middleweight when I was at the Chase. You know, you look at all these people's careers and you do feel jealous because that's just human nature. But then I actually step back and I think, well, actually, like, what have I achieved in my life? You know, I've done some amazing things. I've got 4 children. Like, a lot of these people don't have children. They don't have families. So maybe the sacrifice is different. Maybe I put my career not on a back burner, but slow the pace down a little bit in order to grow a family. And then maybe my time will come later. Maybe those people that I'm admiring and feeling slightly jealous of because of their position and title, maybe they're looking at me and thinking, oh my God, she had children when she was young and she's got this wonderful young family, and you never ever know what people are feeling about you. So if you're jealous of them, the likelihood is they'll probably feel something about the way that your path as well.
I would agree with that, and I think there's this perception that you're supposed to have this kind of plotted out path that's beautifully aligned in this straight line that goes, right, I start here, I finish there, nailed it all. And there's 1 or 2 steps along the way. One, it's not a straight line. One, it's not over 6 months, 12 months. Like I say, I'm 33 years in, so I haven't quite figured it out yet. So, and it's not, it goes like this. That, yeah, you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I knew I liked coding into it when I was a kid. But each step said, all right, I can do that next. I can do that next. And I can do that next. So it takes you in a direction. But like I say, the kind of undulations and the life things that get in the way or add to your life are really as important as the career yourself. And so don't put yourself under pressure that by the time you're 25, you should be running the place and be CEO of this. And that's the other thing I love about LinkedIn when you see somebody's title in the kind of CEO and founder of Keith Noble Industries. So that's just me in charge of myself, and I've given me that fancy title. So there's lots of people that do that as well. They big themselves up. So don't, like I said, don't compare yourself to others, definitely.
Yeah, definitely, and don't rush.
Yeah.
So you don't need to move super fast in your career if you don't want to. Some of our staff at Forepoint have been with us for like 30 years, which is quite rare in our industry. But they're really, really happy and they've got a really good balance, which is, which is unusual. I think my advice would be to establish what you want from your career and also your life. There's not, a career and a life have to go hand in hand, and it depends which bit you push at which certain time. Don't think about what your career should be, think about what you want it to be. Milestones are absolutely nonsense. You need to make your own path, play to your own strengths and develop a career that you love, because if you manage to find what you're really good at and you can build a career around that, you'll never work a day in your life. There's a really good analogy that I found, which was if your child is crap at maths but really, really good at tennis, don't get them a maths tutor, get them a tennis coach. So play to your strengths. We've been actually looking at people's strengths at work with this program called Clifton Strengths, which is like a corporate thing, but it's really good. It's like a quiz that you have a certain amount of time to answer questions, and at the end of it you get a profile, and the profile is really interesting because it highlights people's natural strengths. So that means that as a business we can play to that person's strengths and also help them recognise the areas of weaknesses, so that if there's certain things that they're really struggling that maybe they don't even know that they struggle about, we can help and support there, but we can also maximise on their strengths, which makes everybody's life easier and the business more productive.
And I think the important thing of that is even within the creative world, there's so many varieties of kind of ways of doing things, and even in the skill set you've got here, there'll be people that just seem to be naturally brilliant at coming up with the ideas. There's those that are brilliant at crafting the detail, or illustration, or whatever it might be. And it's very rare, one person, all of those things. So I think it's, you've got to bear that in mind as well, that you can't all be everything all of the time. You can be good, you can get better. It's important to be rounded. It's important to understand a lot of this stuff, but you're never going to be an expert in every single little bit of that creative process.
Yeah, definitely. And just remember, when it feels like everyone else around you is getting a promotion or making a big step, that there's thousands of others out there in the same position as you, they're just not saying it out loud. And then just our summary, which is over to you.
I'll have to remember, I can't remember this bit. I don't know what it is, really. Yeah, well, I suppose it's just a summary. The reason we did the fears, and the reason we didn't want to show work is because work is work, and it's good work, or you might like it, you might not like it. But I think the fears things, like I said before, it's sort of instilled in all of us. And it's still to this day, like I say, 33 years old from when I graduated, I still worry about whether I've got any ideas, whether everybody's going to see through me, or they understand, or I understand what I'm doing. Do I know what I'm doing? Was 33 years worth of luck? Because that's how it feels. It feels like I've
I've been lucky for 33 years, I think that's a little bit
well, I clearly have been. But it is, it's true, and I think but those angst, those things, those feelings are really important to us. So it's not a bad thing that you have them. The bad thing is when you can't control them, when they overwhelm, when they become debilitating. So like I said before, using those bits of fear to drive you on to get better at what you do is really, really important. And that's when you produce your best work, but not when you're so debilitated that you can't even get out of bed and think. But the flip side of that is, think of it a bit like, I suppose these kind of fears or instincts, a bit like fight and flight. So back in the old days with caveman type stuff. But obviously, in the modern day, I can't just run out of the room and go, I'm not doing this anymore. You have to step up, so you can't just say, I'm not doing it. You have to just grab it and have a go. And you just have to make the most of it. So you have to fight. And that's a really important thing. And I know there's a lot of stuff around mental health, as well as physical health. But there's also a little bit of you that just has to kind of, you know what, I am going to just do this. Because like Abby said at the beginning, what's the worst that can happen? And I think probably the last bit is going back to what we said about the highs and lows of this. That unless you experience some of those difficult bits, then the good bits don't really mean anything. If everything comes easy and everything is straightforward, everything on a level playing field, which part of you probably thinks I wish my life was just like that. How dull would it be? So what you've got to do is use those difficult times, because like I said, when you get those highs, there is nothing better than when you get that great idea, the stars align and those wonderful connections are made, and you come up with a new baby, and you go, isn't that amazing? And that's really it, and I think that hopefully,
Yeah.
I mean, that's our kind of view of the world, and hopefully that might help a little bit.
Yep, so that's us.
Bit long, sorry.
Yeah, well, that was great. A couple of quick questions maybe before the next. We need a little bit of a break, I think. We've got loads of books. The questions.
Yeah, has anyone got any questions for us that we can answer quickly?
Quick question. One at the back there.
Oh.
I'll go there first. Go there first, sorry. Go on.
So obviously we all have like these fears, and not all of them, but a lot of us have these fears, but will it ever get easier?
Yes, it'll always get easier.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The question was, will the fears ever get easier? Yes, they'll get easier, providing that you nurture that growth mindset and you try and face those fears rather than avoiding them. You will always have that fear, but it's not always going to be as concentrated as it is now, providing you embrace the fear rather than run away from it.
Sorry, you have a question there, didn't you?
So we've got placement coming up,
Yeah.
and it's quite scary to think, oh, we know enough now to actually go to a placement. Obviously, we'll be learning there, but do you have any advice about that? About feeling like it's like almost, I feel like I'm not ready to do it, but I'm excited.
Well, what I'd say to that is, the whole point of a placement is you're going to go to learn. So you know some stuff. It's amazing how much you do know, but you just don't realise it. But the whole point of going to placement is, they're not looking going, you know, she doesn't know all the stuff that we know. Oh, I'm not going to look at you going, I've done this for 33 years. How come you, as a student, don't know all that stuff? That's not what it's about. It's seeing the potential of people. And all you can do is talk about the things that you enjoy, the things that you love, the work that you've done. And most of the time, people, that's almost a given. They want to know about you. I know I do. We think people are really important. People's skills, people's ability, what kind of personality you are, is as important as the work you do. So again, probably overthinking. Try not to overthink it, but be prepared.
Yeah. No, I would second that. And, you know, secondly, as an employer, if you are welcoming a placement student into your studio, you're doing that with your eyes open and you don't really know what you're going to get, but you know what you can give. So we know who is going to be the best person to mentor you in the studio. We know the kind of projects we can expose you to. We know the kind of skills that we want you to learn whilst you're with us. So I wouldn't worry about going into a studio and not feeling like you're good enough. The fact that you've turned up and you're trying to do it is the most important thing.
Would you give any advice to people who are struggling, like trying to not be a perfectionist? Like, what advice would you be for that? Oh, thank you.
That's a tough one, because I think deadlines. That all I'd say is the deadlines are a really good driver for not being too much of a perfectionist. And I think that we all want to do better. So come back to these figures. You always want to improve, but there is a point where, as you know, being a perfectionist, that you just have to stop. And the driver for most stopping things is time and deadlines. If I gave you a project and said, right, you've got an hour to do it, you do it. If I said you've got a week to do it, you take a week. If I give you a month to do it, you take a month, etc., etc. So I think you have to set yourselves deadlines, and it will never be perfect. So like Abby said before, that progress, not perfection.
It's never perfect. Like he said about the deadlines, like I look back on work that I've done in the last 6 months, and I know that there's always, had I had an infinite amount of time, there's always things that I could do to improve things, but you have to learn to be able to manage your time and reach a point that is good and you're happy with it, and then there is a period of time after that for that sort of improvement. And also with clients, when you give a client work, it's never that is the work that you give them and that's what they have. Like that first presentation or even the second presentation, nothing is for sale. That to your own work as well.
One more.
So to do with placements and like how you looked at it in general, I'm unsure about it a little bit, whether or not to go to London and do a placement or stay up north.
It depends on your reasons why. What's in your head? Are you going, is it a bit scary? Is it a bit intimidating?
That's what I was thinking. It seems a bit intimidating in a way, but then also it's the way way that everyone says here everything's in London, but I kind of don't believe everything's in London.
No, it's not.
I think that's you're right on both counts. I mean, I went on, like I said at the beginning, I'd never been before, scared the living daylights out of me, but it was the best 6 months I ever had. I didn't want to live there.
Were you out of your comfort zone?
I was completely out of my comfort zone, 100%. And but I loved it for the 6 months. When I came back, I thought that was amazing. And had not done that, I could quite easily have just stayed somewhere that felt, you know, all right, and I could just get on the bus and go and what have you. But the fact that I just went, oh, sod this, I just need to do it. And that's that little bit of fear.
Yeah.
So I think it's not about necessarily the best things are in London, not that, it's the experience. And if the experience pushes you out of your comfort zone and teaches you something good, growth mindset, you can't replicate that. So you have to do it, you can't be taught it, you have to go and do it.
Yeah, it's not all the great agencies are in London. There's loads of great agencies in Leeds, Manchester, Preston. There's loads and loads of great agencies all over the place. I think that the important thing is to push yourself into something that you are uncomfortable with, because this is your prime opportunity to do it. You're not going to get that opportunity once you settle into a career to suddenly make a rash decision to go and spend 6 months in London. It's all about the experience and everything that you grow and learn from that. So if you think that there's an agency in London that you really, really love and admire, don't put yourself off from going because it's in London. That is irrelevant, you know. Don't worry about the location. There might be somewhere in Edinburgh, you know, that's equally really far
New York.
away.
Yeah.
New York?
Yeah,
Anywhere.
What did you get offered that?
No.
Manchester
New York.
or New York?
I think the key thing is to not limit yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, go to New York. I got offered. You may as well go and get it.
Hey?
You actually go to New York placement.
No, I'm making a point about basically, you know, you might get offered to go to Amsterdam or New York or Sydney.
Yeah.
I think
We've
it's
got an
the
ex-student who's in New York now, and that's
Or
Yeah.
Bamber Bridge.
his
You
prime
might
goal.
go as far as
His
Bamber
prime
Bridge.
goal was to get to New York.
Yeah.
He wanted to get out of the shithole that was Tilsley. He said he admitted he was.
Yeah.
I think it's having your eyes open to the world, so
It's
don't
really
just limit yourself. You know, if you keep your circle really, really small, then that's where you're going to stay. But actually, if you just completely look at the whole scene and think, no, like, I want to go there, it doesn't matter where they are. Don't let a location be scary. Like, London is
Yeah,
not
well,
a scary.
you know it's come up.
Exactly, and I think that's a good point. So, I went away and we both worked in Manchester. And actually, I went to London and came back to, I live in Preston now. So that's not compromise to me. That's something that I've experienced those things, and there's nothing wrong with coming back.
And you're glad you did it.
Yeah, I've got mates at home. When I came to Preston, they all went from essentially Sunderland to Newcastle on the train every day, and they all still live there, and they all have great lives. But none of them experienced going away and doing things, even at university or polytechnic. Never mind getting a placement. And I just think it's all part of that sponge thing that we talked about. You're absorbing all of this stuff that is really useful. Just life skills, just meeting people, network, all that sort of stuff. To do it.
I'm just aware of time now. I think we might have a bit of a break. If you've got any questions or word, you can maybe ask Keith and Ellie at the back.
Yeah.
Yeah. About 10 minutes. I think Carl is here now, so we have 10 minutes of a comfort break, toilet. Raffle! Raffle! No, what tickets? The raffle.